When Regina wakes up the next morning, the first thing she does is check on her boys. They had insisted on sharing a room, even though there are 2 empty guest rooms, excluding the one decorated for a little princess, and she had peeked in on them in the night to see them peacefully asleep with their backs pressed together in the middle of the spacious bed. Now, however, the bed is empty and they are nowhere to be found on the second floor. She dresses and heads downstairs, but they're not there either. Only her mother sits in the kitchen, a cup of coffee for company. "Have you seen the boys, Mother?" Regina asks, without so much as a good morning. She's still only known them for less than 24 hours, but the idea of losing them again makes her stomach drop. She rests a hand there. There is a void in her womb for each of her lost babies, even the ones whose existences had ended in nothing but blood and pain. The one for them had filled with seeing them alive and well, but now she can feel it opening again, for she fears it had been nothing but a dream. "I saw them sneaking out when I got up. I'm sure they'll be back, darling," Cora responds calmly. "Did they say where they were going?" she asked back, trying to keep her voice steady. Cora takes a sip of coffee. "I don't think they saw me. I'm sure they just went to check something," she says. "Or get something," she adds vaguely. "Like what?" Regina presses, anxious. Cora smiles as she gets up to pour her daughter some coffee. "Oh, I think they have a trick or two up their sleeves, dear. Don't worry." And they do come back, then. It's a while later when the 2 women hear the front door open and hushed voices in the foyer. Regina is out there like a shot. Douglas turns around when he hears her and opens his mouth to speak, but she beats him to it. "Where have you been? I thought you'd left." Douglas grimaces a bit at the clear look of distress on her face and comes forward, placing his warm hands on her shoulders. "Whoa, lass. Take it easy. We had something we needed to do, that's all." "Like what? And where's Douglas?" she asks, immediately worried when she doesn't see the other twin. Her son smirks. "Douglas is right in front of you. Donald is just there." He points out the open door, where his brother is standing on the porch, off to one side with his back to them, so she can't tell what he's doing. "What's he doing out there? He'll catch a chill." She tries to get around Douglas, but he blocks her path. "Now, we brought you a wee gift, but you must be patient," he says, moving her back a step. "Donnie, you can come in now," he calls over his shoulder. Donald turns and steps inside, closing the door behind him. He has a tartan-wrapped bundle in his arms, and she thinks she can see a little white hand resting against his chest. "What is this?" she asks. Donald comes a bit closer. "You said you had another bairn after us. A wee lass with hair red as flame and eyes blue as the sea. Well," he pulls back the tartan to reveal a little girl tucked up against him. "We thought that description awfully matched that our wee sister. So, this is our Rosie." She gasps and her mouth makes an O shape, which is quickly covered by her hand as tears fill her eyes. "How you... This world is so big. How did you..." Because even then, as she stares at the little girl in her eldest son's arms, with no proof but their words, she knows this is her baby girl, the little princess who was ripped from her arms and stolen away by someone who should have protected her. Douglas smiles as he moves so his shoulder brushes Donald's, and he strokes a stray curl from Rosie's face. "We came through the same stones, however several years apart. It was by chance that she was placed in the same home we were. We knew, if only from blankets made by the same hands, that she was our blood." Donald chuckles, almost tearful. Fought at every turn to stay with her, protect her. Maybe she would have been adopted by a good family if we had let her go, but we couldn't forget the way we never were. He took Rosie's little white hand in his, gently prying it open and massaging the palm before letting it close around his fingers. Come say hello, then. She's a bit shy, but she kens who you are. She takes a few steps forward and reaches out a hand to cup Rosie's cheek as tears wet her own. Hello there, little princess, she says, and laughs wetly. You are just as I imagined you. Rosie presses her face against her brother's chest, rather shyly, and peeks up at her with one big blue eye, but doesn't speak. Donald cuddles her gently to him. What do you think? A fewer? This is our mam. Mam? Rosie breathes, turning so both her lovely eyes focus on Regina. Hello? Does this mean you want us? Regina lets out a sob. Oh, baby, I always did. It was your father who didn't. Rosie's little nose wrinkles. She says, Dads are mean. Regina frowns at the response and looks at the boys. Douglas speaks, hand-cupping his little sisters. Och, lass, good dads aren't mean. A good dad loves you, just as a good mam does. Rosie thinks on this for a moment. I dinna ken any good dads, she says at last. Donnie, can I go down? Aye, lass. He kisses her red curls and sets her down. Very carefully she smooths her dress, green plaid with a black bow at the waist, black sleeves, and a matching bow in her hair, and looks up at Regina. Do you like my dress? Donnie and Dougie got it for me, so's I could look bonny to meet ye. Regina laughs and kneels down to her daughter's height. It's beautiful, dear. I love it almost as much as I love you. This gives Rosie a pause. She stares up at Regina with wide eyes. You love me? Regina's heart breaks a bit. Oh, baby, yes. Of course I do. I never stopped. She pulls Rosie into a hug then. Rosie gasps in surprise, little fisted hands held awkwardly on either side of her. She can't remember ever being hugged by anyone other than her siblings, and maybe there's a vague recollection of being hugged by an island woman right before leaving to never return. She wiggles free after a moment, sweet face pulled into a frown. Do you love Donnie and Dougie too? I didn't want you to love me if you didn't love them too. The twins in question make sounds of discomfort and shift forward. Rosie? Of course I do, Regina says, certain, before the boys can finish. She looks up at them, smiling. Even if I can't tell them apart, and they wander off without a word of warning. The boys gasp in false indignance at this, and Rosie giggles, brightening. I can tell them apart. I ken the secret how, she says to Regina. Regina smiles. Oh, do you? What would that be? Rosie stretches up on her toes and Regina bends down so the girl can whisper in her ear. Oh, I see. Their voices, is it? I'll keep that in mind. Regina tells her conspiratorially. The boys pretend to look put out at their sister's sudden betrayal. Oh, lass, you tell their secret. Now we'll never be able to do the switch trick on her. Regina can't take her eyes off her children for the whole rest of the day. She's afraid that if she does, they'll disappear, that this is all too good to be true. So instead, they make shortbread. It's a simple recipe requiring only butter, brown sugar, flour, and vanilla, and makes a pliable dough easy for little hands to manage. Then she discovers Rosie has never made cookies before, or at least not that she can remember. We haven't made biscuits since Irisque, and Rosie was only wee then. Do you remember that, lass? Says Donald. Rosie frowns a bit and clings tightly to her brother. Goodbye, she mumbles shyly, and then, bad. Donald strokes a hand over her red curls and cuddles her to him. What does she mean? Regina asks, not liking the way her daughter has suddenly gone clingy and withdrawn. They don't answer right away. Donald whispers gently to Rosie in that rugged, wild tongue she's heard them use before, and Douglas measures out a cup of flour to add to the bowl. Ah, well, he says eventually. We met Rosie in Inverness, just a few days old, still with the stub of her cord attached and the hazy dark eyes of a newborn. No long after, we were all three moved to a home on Skye. From there, we spent the next 4 years bouncing around the islands. We liked that fine, Donald puts in. When we weren't in school or helping around the crofts, our foster fathers would take us out on their trawlers, saying that real men go to sea to provide for their families. We didn't mind that either. Miles better than the dirty old city anyway. The home in Irisque was the last. It was a good home. They even wanted to adopt us, I think. They didn't have any bairns of their own. We didn't ken what happened. I suppose it wasn't to be. They moved us back to the mainland then, and we can't even say they put us in a wee town. They dumped us straight into Glasgow from Irisque, Douglas continues, before Donald butts in again. At that point, we hadn't been anywhere bigger than Stornoway since Inverness over 4 years previously, so that was really very rude of them. Ruder still was the state of the home they put us in there. We weren't there very long, maybe a month at most, but it was the last home we were in with Rosie. She was taken and we didn't see her again until about a year ago, Douglas finishes. The nature of the separation made us think she might have been dead, and if not dead, then certainly somewhere awful, Donald mutters, holding his little sister close, safe. Regina's hands clench in the ball of dough. How so? She'd find whoever hurt them and make them pay. Maybe another time, lass. 'Tis no something we like to talk about, and we wouldn't wish to upset Rosie by dredging it up. It's more her story than ours, says Douglas, tone suggesting not to push it. She accepts this. Rosie already looks stressed by the mention of the past, and they all do. Then, that family who was going to adopt you, if they had, you wouldn't have been separated. You could have been happy with them. Do you know why they didn't? Donald lifts Rosie up onto a bar stool so she can help out cut the cookies. No, at the time, no. But now we can. It was because we needed to be at a certain place at a certain time to do a certain thing. We couldn't have been at that place at that time to do that thing if we had stayed on Irisque. Regina looks skeptical. What sort of thing? The boys think of their other 2 sweet sisters, who would surely have died frozen at the foot of the cleft stone. If we had been adopted, we'd no have been there, and then innocent lives would have been lost. Regina wants to ask more, but she can tell they're not willing to elaborate, so she keeps quiet, turning to Rosie instead. Which shapes would you like to cut out, dear? She asks, spreading out the cookie cutters on the counter. There are stars, snowflakes, a simple saw-edged rectangle, and a similarly edged circle. Rosie hums, happy with the change of subject. This one. She selects a 6-pointed star. Going to pick it up, her palm unfolds, but her fingers stay curled, and she fumbles and struggles to get a hold of it. Donnie, help, she says, looking up at him adorably with her big blue eyes. Aye, that was a good try, lass, he says, as he takes her hand and opens it fully, massaging palm and delicate little fingers before giving her the cutter to hold on to. Regina frowns as she watches. She'd noticed the way Rosie held her hands fisted up, and had thought nothing of it at first, but now it seems there's more to it. Douglas must notice the look on her face then, because he speaks. She's no very dexterous. I noticed. Her hands seem awfully stiff. What's the matter with them? Not an injury, surely, she replies. Douglas watches his siblings for a long moment before answering. No, exactly. When she was away from us, the people she was with kept her hands bound up with duct tape so she couldn't move them, and for the entire time she was there, by the time she escaped and managed to chew it off, they were all seized up. Regina is horrified. And this was a foster home? Douglas shakes his head. No, it wasna. We didn't ken where it was, only that it was a place where they didn't like wee lassies who'd fight. He doesn't mention the car in the alley behind the house in Glasgow, or the bag full of money, or the blood on the skirt of Rosie's nightdress when they'd found her. He knows it'll break her heart if he does, and he knows it'll break his if he has to say it out loud. I'm sure you can imagine places. We certainly did, he adds lowly. She can. Tears bubble up and overflow at the images of her traitorous mind conjures. My poor baby, she cries, covering her mouth with her hand. My poor baby. Douglas moves over to wrap an arm around her shoulders. Aye, he says. I'm sorry. She looks at him. Whatever for? It's not your fault. He shakes his head. She didn't come to us at only a few days old for nothing. Scotland might be small, but it's no that small. We could have gone all our lives without ever meeting. We were meant to protect her, and we failed. In a way, then, we failed you too. Regina turns around, hands tightening in her sleeves. No, that's not true, Douglas. She was never your responsibility, not when you were only children yourselves. Aye, but she was, still is, always will be. Donald comes up beside them, having left Rosie cutting out cookies. We heard a song once, when she was gone and we were aching, and the only thing to ease that pain was more pain. He closes his eyes, remembering the lyrics. She is the sunlight, the sun is gone. If loving her is heartache for me, if holding her means that I have to bleed, she is the healing and I am the pain. Aye, I remember, Douglas adds. She is the healing to our pain and the sun to our storm. Rosie stands, staring at the room that was meant for her. She can't believe it. A room fit for royalty, with her name on the door. Her eyes travel from the pale purple canopy bed to the darker purple shag rug below. The furniture is all white to match the gauzy white curtains and stand out against the purple walls. There are shelves of books and toys never touched, and a closet full of brand new clothes never worn. Her lips part in a gasp as she looks, spotting a big white teddy bear on the bed. "'Tis for me?" she asks, voice soft. Regina nods, smiling. "Yes, dear. Do you like it? We can change it if you don't." Poor Rosie doesn't know what to think. She raises her fisted hand to her mouth as if she wants to suck her thumb, even though she's rather too old for that. Donald sees how overwhelmed she looks and kneels down to her level. It's very nice, isn't it? A bonny room for a bonny wee lass, aye? He says gently. Aye, Rosie replies. Haiglavria, she agrees, even as she defaults back to her native tongue. He takes her hand then, and leads her into the room. Should we have a closer look, do you think? She looks around tentatively before turning back to Regina. Do Donnie and Dougie get a nice room too? She asks. Oh, well, she starts, suddenly feeling bad that their room isn't decorated like hers is. Oh, aye, Douglas cuts in. It's no as fancy as this, but it's still the nicest room we've probably ever had, eh, Donnie? Donald nods in agreement. Dinna fash about that, lass, he says, unsure as to whether it's directed to his mother or his sister. Okay, says Rosie, relaxing a bit. She walks around the room, looking and touching as if she wants to commit it all to memory. She picks up the big white bear off the bed and buries her face in its soft fur. I used to have a teddy bear when I was wee, but I dinna ken what happened to him, she says when she looks up. 'Tis for me? She asks again. Regina comes in and kneels in front of her. Yes, sweetheart, it's all for you, she tells her. Then Rosie does something none of them expect her to do. Still grasping the teddy bear by its arm, she throws her own arms around Regina. Her mother hugs her back, tucking her little red head under her chin and brushing the pad of her thumb over her daughter's pale cheek. My little princess, you're home safe now.